here again with you. A couple months ago, we had a conversation about trauma-informed care, and that really focused on how we do our work with other people, with the people that we serve. And when you're actually talking about trauma-informed care, it's really important to also remember our role and ourselves as the service providers. So that is really what we're going to talk about today. But first, let me, let's see, there we go. I included a picture of me this time. If you haven't been or haven't participated in any of my presentations, my full-time job is as a psychotherapist and addiction specialist in Madison at the Community Mental Health Center for our county. And I've also worked at Dane County, the Salvation Army of Dane County Single Women Shelter for about 8 years. And just to be clear, I only work one evening a week, so it is a limited. I set some good boundaries there and limit it to one evening a week. And furthermore, I am a trauma therapist or a trauma treatment specialist, and I have quite a bit of specialized training in trauma treatment, like EMDR or somatic experiencing. And I was identified as a person who began to, or as they call it, trauma-informed care champion. And so I started doing trainings because it was kind of an interesting combination to be a therapist and a trauma specialist, but then also really be lucky enough to have the experience of working in a homeless shelter. And I have my email address there here at Journey, so if there's any question that we don't get to, or if there's anything else I can be helpful with, you have my email and you can feel free to send me an email. So I'd like to first just invite everybody to take a moment and enjoy the scenery here, enjoy the bluebells here and the colors of greens and blues, and just let your eyes enjoy the colors. These are colors that we know to be relaxing, and I don't know if you get to be part of the decision makers of the color of your walls in your offices or in your workspaces, but if you do ever get the opportunity to be a part of that and you get to get some color change, just know that blues and greens are considered soothing and relaxing colors. And today we're going to talk about vicarious trauma, which also is known as compassion fatigue, and also the notion of burnout, which some of us may be sort of familiar with, and some of us may feel like we're nearing. But we're going to kind of talk about how all of those terms are related, and how all of those terms are important to talk about within the context of trauma-informed care. And you'll see some more relaxing photographs because we're going to kind of take this in a this presentation will be a little less dry, first of all, I hope, and give you an opportunity to also self-reflect, because this really is about you as a service provider and as a caregiver, and really reintroducing the notion that in all of this, that you matter too, and your health is incredibly important in your role as a service provider. And so finally then, if we start to notice whether we might be experiencing some symptoms of compassion fatigue, or if we're experiencing or really becoming aware that we've been experiencing a great deal of vicarious trauma, and we certainly don't want to get to that place where we're burned out, then we really have to understand, especially if you've had some training in college as a social worker or a therapist, they talk about self-care, and they kind of, they try to tell us that it's really important. But when we're young and full of energy, we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about that, and kind of, we're ready to go, we're ready to work really hard, and we go, yeah, self-care, we'll think about that later. So really seeing self-care as the solution to addressing, preventing compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma so that we ultimately can avoid burnout. So I first want to again ask you to take a moment to notice right now, are you comfortable in your chair? Are you warm or cool enough? Do you have a beverage or snacks or your lunch so that you can nourish yourself during this presentation? Have you been outside yet today? Here in Madison, we have considerably cooler temperatures, but we also have the sunshine today. So wherever you are, have you had a chance, or even to perhaps even just look out the window? And have you had a chance to stand up, walk around, loosen up, stretch out your body at all today? And I just want to invite you to consider that for a moment and to develop some awareness about how are you right now in the moment. Okay, so how is the notion of vicarious trauma really a part of trauma-informed care? Well, it's incredibly important. Vicarious trauma and understanding it and being aware of it, and being aware of it in your own self is critical in delivering trauma-informed services, because understanding how we're responding to the work we do, bearing witness to trauma, working with trauma survivors, is as important as understanding trauma in our clients. How we are reacting, how we are doing, is as important, and which might feel like a weird notion, especially if we've been programmed as caregivers. We tend to kind of deprioritize our needs, and we sometimes don't even get in touch with how we're doing because, oh yeah, I'll get to me after I fix everything for everybody else. So again, just to repeat, having that awareness of how we're doing is as important as understanding trauma and all the notions of trauma-informed care as we deliver services to our clients. They are equally important. And, self-care, caring for ourselves in a trauma-informed way will help preserve our long-term health in this work, and certainly will prevent burnout. So they're very closely linked. You can't really get a good feel for trauma-informed services without really understanding what vicarious trauma is. Is that a blank? There we go. Well, again, want to just give you a opportunity to just notice the colors in the tulip field here, and let your eyes take a rest and enjoy the scenery. Okay, so vicarious trauma is also known as secondary traumatic stress, compassion fatigue. I think there's insidious stress, I think, is another way, or secondary trauma. Oh yeah, secondary traumatic stress. So there's a couple of different words for it. Compassion fatigue is another one, and so it's definitely a phenomenon. And so vicarious trauma really is what happens to us as service workers, as service providers over time, by virtue of serving people who are suffering, bearing witness to their suffering and their needs. So it's a process. It unfolds over time. It's a cumulative effect, but it happens because you care about other people. Because, the very reason you do the work is because you care about other people. And so you can see at what a high risk that we have to developing vicarious trauma. If we care, it is possible for us to actually become traumatized by the work that we do. So I put this quotation here by Terry Spahn Nelson, and you can see I bolded the "it will affect you." This work will affect you. Acknowledge that it will affect you. If you are an empathic, active listener, this work will affect you. But, as she says, recognizing that it's normal is very important. That it will affect us, and it's very normal that it will affect us because we care. So it is okay to feel outraged, horrified, shocked, saddened, or vulnerable. So what does it look like? It's important to know that vicarious trauma is going to look different in different kinds of service providers. But there are some general patterns, and there's some general things to kind of think about and be aware of and see if you're noticing it in yourself. And that might be about feeling vulnerable, questioning your safety, your own safety sort of in your everyday life. And trusting. I know for me personally, when I do my work, and I have so many clients that are in abusive relationships, it was really difficult to resist the notion that there exists no healthy relationships, because I just never saw one in the therapy room. And seeing 6 or 7 or 8 people every day with relationship problems, which of course relationship problems is something that's frequently a feature of substance abuse or mental health problems or trauma. So of course I'm going to see a lot of it, but it started to change my thinking. And so even my own interpersonal relationships and sort of trusting and sort of already assuming that, there's the potential for abuse. So you may notice that your level of trust has changed, or that your interpersonal relationships in your world are shifting in some ways. They're looking different. Maybe they're not feeling as good, or maybe you're noticing yourself sort of protecting yourself more. And certainly as we hear about what has happened to people, on one hand, we can certainly reflect and notice the resilience that person has, and we can certainly notice and celebrate the courage that they had to walk through our doors and ask for help. But there's times when that gets crowded out of the picture, and we begin to see more, and sometimes even only see all of the negative, all of the suffering and the violence and the, in our own community, in our state, in the world. And then our view of the world changes. It's difficult to, or even if you just pick up the newspaper, of course, to believe that the world has safety and beauty, and in fact really see it as a place where it's all about violence, it's all about danger. And so I want to invite you too to kind of consider that. How do you view the world today? What do you see when you sort of look out there? And what's your view of the world after a day of work, after you've met with some people who've been suffering or have been survivors of violence? What is that like for you? There's also other kinds of additional signs of vicarious trauma. Certainly, and if you look at this list, and if you've seen any of my other trainings on trauma-informed care, and we talk about symptoms of trauma, this looks a lot like what trauma survivors experience, what we might observe in them, and what they might report to us is happening in their life. And certainly vicarious trauma means that we might start to experience these signs and symptoms because we are bearing witness to their trauma. So we might, and again, I'd like to invite you to sort of check in with yourself. What are you noticing? You know, has there been any shifts in sleep for you? Either wanting to sleep more or not being able to sleep? Has eating changed? Too much or too little, or just going for junk food? Are you noticing pains and aches, whether it's headaches or gut problems? Are you getting more sick more often? And certainly related to that view of the world, our own spiritual beliefs may, get some wear and tear. Again, trying to remember that the world has beauty and safety in it. Cognitively, we may start to not be able to really concentrate. We might stop caring as much. And it's not so much that we stop caring, but we're maxed out. The caring, we're at capacity, and adding any more is going to break us down. So that's why we begin to let a few things drop off and perhaps feel a little less compelled because we're starting to get exhausted. Certainly, it is absolutely possible that there may be times when you're working with somebody and they're sharing their trauma narrative. It may bring up stuff in your own life. It's certainly no secret that a lot of human service workers and caregivers are trauma survivors themselves. It may even be one of the reasons why this work, that we're very good at it. But sometimes it may fire up some of your own memories or your own experiences. It's possible to have similar kinds of nightmares that a client might be reporting that they have. You may seem a little more irritable and withdrawn. Things aren't quite as fun anymore. And isolating, not really engaging in the rest of the world, kind of work and sleep. Go home, watch a bunch of TV, play a lot of video games, eat, and go to bed. And really not spending time with those folks that care about you. And emotional, there's a variety of emotions, as you can see, mostly unpleasant, and certainly depletion, feeling emotionally depleted and emotionally numb, because there comes a point when the brain, and if you've seen the other presentations, when the brain has had enough, the brain will shut it down, and the brain will create distance from it. So just as much as it can happen to your clients, it can happen to you as well. And so when you're noticing that you're not feeling anything, check in there. Is that emptiness or is it numbness? Most likely it's numbness, because now you're creating distance between you and your emotions, because they're starting to get very overwhelming. And of course they are, because the work that you do is very difficult. I mean, that shouldn't be a newsflash, right? The work that we do is difficult and it's complicated. And in fact, if you have people in your life who are not human service workers, do you notice that they're often asking you, my God, how do you do that work every day? And that's a really fair question to ask. How do we do it every day? Well, we do it with a lot of self-care, hopefully. Hopefully that's the answer to that question. Now, in order to address and start thinking about how you're doing, there are actually some clinically validated self-assessments. And so I put up here the example of the Professional Quality of Life Scale, the ProQOL. It's available at proqol.org. Now there's 30 questions on the actual scale. I threw in 12 to give you an idea, and again, actually give you a little time and space to take a look at these 12 and see what happens for you. Notice how you would answer. So there's 30 items, 30 statements on the assessment, and you think about how often you might have felt this way over the past 30 days using a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being never and 5 very often. And so ask yourself, how often do I feel I'm happy? How often do I feel I'm preoccupied with more than one person that I help or I'm helping? I get satisfaction from being able to help people. I feel connected to others. I feel invigorated after working with those I help. So if you are interested in doing that self-assessment for yourself, or if there are supervisors and managers with us today, this might be something that when you are having conversations with your team about how they're doing and inviting them to think about how they're doing, this might be something that can be helpful, because I'm sure that even as you're looking at this and sort of checking with yourself about how you would answer that, there might be some new things that you're noticing. You might kind of go, hey, yeah, I am happy pretty often. I do get satisfaction, and that's great. That's super. And there might also be, some of these, and it's like, I feel invigorated after working with those I help. Are you serious? And so, again, look through these. Take a look at how you're responding. How do you answer these questions, and what's that like for you? I'm getting a little therapist-y, I noticed that, but one of the keys we're going to learn about self-care is that you got to develop awareness. You've got to get rid of that pattern of cutting off your reaction, cutting off how you feel. Get back into noticing how you feel, because that gives you the opportunity, obviously, gives you the choice to heal that and prevent burnout. Okay, so why are we even talking about this? Because there's an enormous risk of not paying attention to vicarious trauma or compassion fatigue or secondary traumatic stress, and that is burnout. And in the human service field, we throw the word burnout around a lot, right? Because we've seen it. We've seen people who've been in that place. We may be feeling like we're there, or we are on our way. Burnout is professional exhaustion, losing interest in the work. And because this is a vast field of business, you probably have met a human service professional who seemed burned out. And what was that like? What were they like? Pleasant, enjoyable are not usually words that are used to describe somebody who seems burned out. And that person would probably not answer you with happy, invigorated, if you were to ask them how they're doing. So this is why we have to talk about this, is to prevent this. And as we probably know, there's a high risk of burnout in social work or human service work and caregiving work. There's a high risk of it, and when you get to that place, it's very difficult and it's painful, and it certainly impacts our work because we're less effective. Okay, so we're noticing some signs and symptoms. Now that we understand sort of that vicarious trauma happens, it happens because, by virtue of the fact that we care about people, we feel committed to changing the world, to alleviate suffering, and all the other wonderful reasons that we do this work. It's that fact that actually put us at risk for vicarious trauma, that put us at risk ultimately for burnout. And so now that we get that, really, how do we avoid heading down the road to Crispy Town? Turn me over because I'm burnt. So once again, I want to give you an opportunity to enjoy this picture and perhaps visualize yourself there. Maybe you're on a hammock, maybe you're in the water, maybe you're just enjoying the sun, noticing through your senses what that's like. What do you see and what do you smell? What are you hearing? What does it feel like on your skin? Let yourself luxuriate with the visual of this photo. Let yourself luxuriate in a little mind vacation. And know that you can create a space in your mind that's safe. You get to call all the shots. You get to decide who can come there and who can't. You get to set all the rules at your safe space, and you get to choose and design every single detail, every sensory detail. And know that if you put that together in your mind, there's a place that you can go whenever you're feeling stressed or experiencing an overwhelming emotion and you want to just take a moment. Take a moment after your 50-minute sessions, if that's what you are able to do, or after meeting with somebody, and kind of let yourself have a little break, have a little brain vacation, take a rest. Get on the hammock or get on in the sand there and just take a rest. So self-care. Self-care is the antidote. Self-care is the answer to preventing burnout, to preventing compassion fatigue. And again, you know, we've heard this. We've heard about self-care. Self-care is so important, but we're always putting it off, right? I mean, if I ask you to sort of think about when was the last time you did something really super nice, like, and whatever that is for you, maybe you were able to get a massage or a manicure or take a yoga class or go out bike riding or whatever that is for you, and just have you time or have nurturing time for you. When I ask that, think about the last time. When was that? Was that yesterday? Was that over the weekend? Was that months ago? Was that, do you not even remember the last time that you said, I'm going to take some me time? Everybody else needs to stay away from me because I'm taking me time. And some of you may be responding, well, you know, that's pretty selfish. That's pretty selfish. And we were programmed, right? We're programmed to put everybody else in front of ourselves. And so sometimes we're like, well, I can't do that. You know, my kids need this, and my partner, my spouse needs this, and you know, they need this for school, and then there's work, and there's this and that, and so why are you telling me, you know, why are you asking me about when I'm taking care of myself? Because I may not be. Because we, you know, we strive to take good care of the people we serve, but yet when we take a look at ourselves and how we're taking care of ourselves, there's this huge, for most people, there's a huge difference there. There's a huge differential there. So it's really important to remember that we matter too. That how we are doing in trauma-informed services, in that model, how we're doing is as important as how our clients are doing. We matter too. But as I've been saying throughout, you know, those of us who gravitate toward this field are often very, I often have a long history of caregiving because it's something where it's so easy for us to slide into it because we're super good at it. We've become super skilled at it. But it's usually an unbalanced kind of thing. You know, and when we're programmed at a young age, out of necessity, out of all kinds of reasons to start to take care of other people, sometimes we, as they say, become parentified. We're taking care of our own parents or our own caregivers, or maybe we're taking care of our younger siblings. And it's usually unbalanced because, first of all, as a child, you know, you shouldn't have to be doing that in the first place. So we might have to surrender our childhood and the opportunity to play and be a kid so that we're taking care of other people. And there's nothing wrong with that in the sense that, you know, we did it because we thought we had to. And like I said, we became really good at it. It feels very normal and natural for us. But there's a cost, right? There's a cost when it's not balanced. And certainly when you're a kid, you don't know what the balance is, or as a teenager or a young adult. because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Burnout is likely to happen. And so even if you're not going to drink the Kool-Aid about, that self-care is not something that's selfish. It's something that is important. It's a survival skill that we need to take seriously and give ourselves permission to do. If none of that really moves you at all, then I'm going to come at you with this. When you're not taking care of you, then you don't do as good of a job of taking care of other people. So there. So there's a couple different reasons to do it. If it's difficult to buy into that you matter too, then think about how you become a little bit less effective in doing your job that you're normally very, very good at doing when you start to be affected by the job. You don't do. Then sometimes we have boundary violations, or we have ethical lapses. We might make mistakes. We might, when we're weary, we're a lot less sort of able to think about and to remember our code of ethics. And so that's a really vulnerable time. And that's how, that can happen when you're not taking care of yourself. Because you may not be thinking as clearly. You may be distracted. And when a ethical dilemma comes in, you may not have the wherewithal to be taking the time to get consultation, think about the problem, and make the ethical decision. So understand that, so that perhaps that might compel you to take better care of yourself. And again, we matter too. And I have to say it a lot. I want to say it a lot, and I want you to hear it a lot, so that you can not put your wall up and say, well, now, wait, I have X people on my caseload, and that's what I got to do. I got to work on that. And certainly, and I'm saying you matter too. And so self-care really has three general areas. The three keys to self-care is awareness, right? We're really good at disconnecting from how we feel. Those of us who are, lifetime caregivers, we don't check in with ourselves. We don't check in with ourselves because when we take a really close look, we go, whoa, I'm not taking care of myself, right? Or the time we become aware is when we go to the doctor for a physical, and it's like, man, your blood pressure is out of the ballpark. Holy crap, this is, you gotta, XYZ, lose weight, or, boy, your blood sugar is really out of control. These are things that happen under stress, and ways that our bodies are affected by stress. And so we're experiencing it, but then we actually disconnect from it. And we go, no, I'm not going to tune into myself right now because I have too much to do. Too many other people in my world that I need to take care of. And awareness is something in the prefrontal cortex of our brain. And when we're under stress, the brain actually, as an adaptation, sometimes takes that offline. So there's actually a neurophysiological explanation for why we lose the awareness, and why particularly caregivers lose awareness, because we're working from the back part of our brain, the more primitive part, because we're getting things done. We got to get things done. And awareness, because if you remember the previous presentations, if you let thinky brain call the shots in a threat situation, it thinks too much and gets in the way. And so our bodies actually respond for us and keep us going. But then again, a few slides earlier, it's not sustainable. And like I said, it might just be drawn to your attention that, oh my gosh, I've gained 20 pounds, or my blood pressure is crazy, or I'm developing prediabetes. So becoming aware, noticing how you're doing, giving yourself permission to be aware and notice what's happening for you. I use the word notice a lot And I use the word notice a lot in my work as a therapist. I actually do a lot of body somatic-based treatment, because when you're looking at trauma, there's really a lot of stuff in the body that a person's usually not connecting with. They oftentimes, as they say, stay up in the head. And when you're not getting into the body, and as I say, noticing it, the body's craving to be noticed. So all of those opportunities to take a look at the photographs, or to just stop and notice how you're doing, is really a very important first step. Bring the awareness back in. Give yourself permission to notice. Because then you now have a choice. You notice, am I heading toward Crispy Town? Or is there a rest stop along the way that I can actually bypass? And I can get back into what they call compassion satisfaction. Another key is balance. And I posed a very crazy question. What if you let yourself have an hour of you time for every hour you spend of caregiving others' time? So yeah, I'm giving you time to sort of laugh at that, and have a really good belly laugh about that, because that really seems preposterous, probably. Okay, so maybe it's not realistic, and that's certainly possible, and that's certainly fine. But then the next question to ask, is there a sustainable ratio? How close to balancing can you get? What's the balance that's realistic? How can you move toward a lifestyle, a day-to-day living that includes self-nurturing? And you might have to think about that one, because we may be sort of already in that behavior pattern where we think about that. Oh, me time. Oh, are you serious? Or me time, get out of here. I'm not even going to entertain that notion. So think about, is there a way that you can even carve out an hour a week, where you are like, seriously, everybody in your world, you tell them, or you put a sign out, or you text everybody and you say, okay, for the next hour, I'm going to take care of me. So do not call me, do not talk to me, do not bother me, because it's me time now. And then you can say, it's self-care, and it is essential to success in my job. It is essential. It's an essential survival. Tell them it's essential for my survival that I take this hour wherein everybody stays away from me. And then think about that, what that would be like. What would you do? What would that be like? You still may be laughing, and I certainly respect that. Or if it's really difficult to imagine, like, I can't even think about what that would be like. Oh my gosh. So I invite you to give yourself a little time to consider that. And then connection. Just like it is in trauma-informed services, in that model, healing happens in relationships. And so if you remember, a really important concept in trauma-informed service is to know that every contact that you have with that client, and it doesn't matter who you are, if you're shelter staff, or if you're one of the case managers, or if you're a program manager, it doesn't matter, or if you're preparing the food, that every interaction that you have with your clients has the potential to heal and repair or re-traumatize. You have that potential to do one or the other. And connection is a really important notion as a caregiver to trauma survivors, forming a connection, because connection then can cultivate trust, can cultivate a sense of safety. So it would certainly make sense that if we are now beginning to be affected by the trauma of the people we serve, our own sense of connection may actually begin to wear away. isolation is oftentimes a really big sign of compassion fatigue. You're just too tired to go to your bowling league or your golf league, or too tired to get together with friends for coffee or continue on with your knitting project. We're too tired, and so we might find ourselves really isolated. And so connection, reconnecting with people, and what's really super, super important is, of course, connecting to those who truly support us, who nurture us and nourish us and love us and make us laugh and give us hugs. So this might be a list that's not necessarily long if they meet all those criteria, but the connection should be to those kinds of people, people that help support you. And then also to the greater community, especially when you're noticing your thoughts about the world and the community is starting to get skewed, to get back out there and to see the beauty again. And that might look different for lots of different people. For me, I know I like to take my dog to the dog park or go swimming with him in the lake, or go out to a state park and do some hiking with the dog, or just sometimes snuggling with the dog. But reconnecting to nature, reconnecting to, or even leaning on my pet, my dog, because he doesn't, he's not judgmental, and he listens. He's a great listener. He never talks. He always listens. So it's a very good therapist. And connect to the, even if you're getting out to just have some coffee sometimes, even if you're taking your lunch break, like, as you should, and not work through lunch, get outside for a walk. So reconnecting with people, with our supporters, and reconnecting out there to the world around us. So those are kind of the general principles, but I've got a couple of lists, or a list here of a couple of things that can be easy fixes. And you may have seen these before, and you may also have some ways that you take care of yourselves, and I would love to hear that at the end of the discussion. If you've got some really super ways that feel really good for you, that feel like they're good self-care strategies, I hope you'll share them with us. But here's just a few. Like I say, take your breaks. Get outside if you can, or walk around and stretch out a little bit. I've been noticing that for me personally, I sit in a chair all day, and I'm always like reshifting, crossing my legs and sitting Indian style and doing all these different things. But I'm noticing my hips are starting to hurt because I sit so long and so when I talk to my doc about it, she's like, well, you got to get up between sessions then and walk around a little bit, loosen them up and stretch out your hip flexors. So don't skip lunch. Or if you're going to skip lunch, at least then make sure that you're eating something, and maybe graze over time. I've got in my desk drawer, I've got mixed nuts and some granola. Sometimes I got some beef jerky in there. Sometimes a little bit of sweet stuff. But so that if I am booked back to back from 9 to 6 without a lunch hour, which sometimes I do, I sometimes really overbook myself. Then I can at least grab a handful of almonds before the next person I see. So I can at least keep, actually I have diabetes, so I have to sort of keep my blood sugar stable. And here again about awareness. Check in with yourself. Check in with yourself, notice, and then listen to what your body is telling you. What is your body might say, man, we got to get some more sleep. Or, man, we got to get in and get a pedicure. Or, when was the last time we took a nice walk or a bike ride or whatever? So check in, notice, listen. Be kind to yourself. Isn't that interesting that we should put that on the list? Remember to be kind to yourself, but it has to be said. It has to be reminded. And here's another thought. Behave as if you matter too. You can reconnect with old friends, and certainly Facebook helps us do that sometimes. Try something new. Maybe something you've always wanted to do but never had time. Make the commitment. Or something you used to do, but then as you got busy with your career and your family and all those things, that sort of fell away. Is there something that you would like to reconnect to? Some of these things are, more contemplative, individualized sort of activities, and some are in, teams, so that allows you to sort of socialize and be around other people. And here, again, what I was talking about is to take, if you must, then, if it takes that you have to take a calendar and say, all right, on September 23rd, from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, that is official me time. That is it, and nobody gets to bother me. Nobody is going to, it's completely me. I get to decide what I'm going to do. And then what if you shut your phone off sometimes? And again, you may be shocked at that notion, or again be giggling and going, yeah, whatever, sure, I'll shut my phone off, And also, not only phone time, but then screen time, What would it be like to take a day where you're not on the internet? Perhaps this is going to be a weekend day, a non-work day, where you're not looking at a computer screen, you're not looking at TV screen, you're not looking at your iPad screen, and you're not looking at your phone screen, and you're not looking at, but you're actually out in the world looking at the world. What would that be like? All right, so let's just enjoy this picture again. I mean, what would that be like to be able to sit under that tree there and just gaze out at the world? And I also just put a couple of websites in. The Self-Care Starter Kit, I was looking at it, it's really good. I mean, and how cool is that it's a school of social work, I think, University of Buffalo, actually, created the Self-Care Starter Kit. So it's right off the bat, right in school, they're really inculcating the idea of self-care as a critical part of the job. And then to take the quality of life scale, there's the website there. And there's actually something called the Compassion Fatigue Awareness Project. And there's some pretty cool resources on that as well. So that is all I have today.
All
I'm
right.
ready for questions.
If anyone has any questions, we'll wait a few minutes and you can type them into the box there. And Robin will be happy to answer those.
Sure. And also, as I mentioned before, if you've got some good self-care techniques that you do that work for you, I really would love to hear, and I would love to cross-pollinate that amongst all of the listeners, because that might get people kind of thinking about what they can do. There's got to be somebody out there who's doing good self-care.
No takers so far.
So then this presentation was really necessary then.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and conclude for today. Just two more small announcements before we end. After this is ended, the webinar, a really brief little survey will pop up. We are already in the process of beginning our plans for the 2014 webinar series, and it just asks like some suggested topics that you might have. So if you would provide that feedback, that would be helpful as we continue to move forward in planning for next year already. And then in October and November, we will have Dr. Jim Winship from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, who will be presenting for us on in October on the stages of change model, and in November on strengths-based perspective in casework and in practice. And for those of you within the Salvation Army, he is the author of the Faith in Action curriculum or book that some of you use in your programs. So that'll be some really great presentations. You'll want to watch for those emails, and if you want to be added to the list, if you don't receive those directly, just let me know, and I will add you to the direct email list for those registration links. All right.
Super.
No questions still, so we will kind of close out for the day, and I will get all the information emailed to you tomorrow or Monday for the link to the recording and the slides if you'd like to review those. So have a great day, everyone.